A modern corporation's most valuable asset is entirely intangible. Financial records, trade secrets, and client databases are reduced to binary code, stored on fragile physical hardware of silicon and glass. To generate revenue, this data cannot remain isolated in a vault. It must continuously leave the safety of the internal network and travel across the inherently hostile environment of the public internet. The threat environment waiting on the outside is entirely automated. Attackers deploy brute force software designed to systematically exhaust millions of letter and number combinations to crack network passwords. When raw computational power falls short, variations like dictionary attacks exploit human predictability, testing thousands of common words and phrases until a login yields. The risks extend beyond malicious code. The physical infrastructure housing the network is equally vulnerable to geographic realities, fires, floods, and power grid failures. Because these digital and physical variables are in constant flux, maintaining a perfectly sealed environment is a moving target. Security is not a finished state, but a constant effort to manage an expanding surface area of risk. This reality requires a multi-stage defense strategy, an architecture that assumes a breach will eventually occur and focuses on isolating the damage before it can reach the core systems. Corporate security requires engineering a system where the resources required to execute an attack strictly outweigh the financial value of the targeted data. We begin at the micro level, with the smallest unit of business value, a single data packet transiting between two corporate nodes. As this packet travels, it faces passive interception known as sniffing, where software silently eavesdrops on the data, or spoofing, where a fake destination impersonates a legitimate host to capture the transmission. This diagram illustrates a man-in-the-middle attack. A third party intercepts the packet in transit, reading or modifying the information. Data encryption is the primary defense. It scrambles the data into useless code, ensuring the intercepted packet is unreadable without the decryption key. Early models relied on private key or symmetric encryption. Both parties share a single secret key to encode and decode the message. The structural flaw is that this single key must also be transmitted over the network, leaving it vulnerable to the same interception. Public key or asymmetric encryption solves this exchange problem by utilizing two mathematically related keys. The sender secures the packet using a widely known public key belonging to the recipient. The critical mechanism is the decoding process. The recipient uses a closely guarded private key to unlock the packet. Because the private key is never transmitted over the internet, the sender's payload arrives securely. To prevent an attacker from generating fake public keys, trusted third-party certificate authorities validate the ownership of these key pairs. Encryption effectively neutralizes threats to the payload itself. It does nothing, however, to prevent an attacker from overwhelming the physical network pathway that the payload travels on. Moving outward from the individual packet, the next architectural layer is the edge of the corporate local area network, where internal systems interface directly with the open internet. This diagram outlines the function of a network firewall. Acting as the first line of perimeter defense, it examines incoming queries and explicitly denies entry based on programmed rules targeting source addresses, destinations, and header data. Repeated failed queries from a single source serve as an early warning system. The firewall logs these penetration attempts and alerts security personnel to investigate the targeted weakness. Organizations also deploy application firewalls as a specialized secondary layer. Using proxy server technology, these firewalls act as intermediaries, isolating and deeply inspecting traffic for specific high-risk programs like email or file transfers. These barriers have strict limitations. Firewalls read routing instructions, not payload intent. They are blind to viruses embedded inside otherwise authorized traffic. This visualization demonstrates a distributed denial of service attack. By commanding thousands of infected machines to flood the perimeter with open connections, attackers can overwhelm the firewall's processing memory, forcing a total system crash. Firewalls execute logical filtering with precision, but perimeter defenses will inevitably fail if the raw, physical volume of an attack exceeds the hardware's capacity. IT environments require continuous software updates and hardware patches.
Because the network changes daily, static defenses naturally degrade over time. Administrators rely on vulnerability testing as a passive diagnostic tool. These automated scans sweep the infrastructure to flag structural flaws, identifying missing operating system patches, open server ports, or expired security certificates. Identifying an open port provides targets for remediation, but it does not reveal the methods an active attacker will use to exploit that specific weakness in a live environment. This network map shows penetration testing, the active countermeasure to passive scanning. Security professionals use real-world hacking tools to launch simulated attacks against the infrastructure. The goal is not to find a single flaw, but to chain multiple minor vulnerabilities together to gain deep system access. This exercise reveals the actual skill level required to breach the network and tests the speed of the system's automated countermeasures. Relying solely on passive diagnostic scans leaves a system exposed. Operational resilience requires actively attempting to break the architecture before an adversary successfully does. Even if the cryptographic algorithms hold and the firewalls filter the traffic, the physical data center remains exposed to catastrophic events. Floods, fires, and earthquakes bypass digital defenses entirely. Infrastructure requires immediate mitigation tactics for localized threats. Backup generators automatically trigger during power failures, and IT staff initiate graceful system shutdowns to isolate hardware during a fast-spreading virus attack. When hardware is destroyed, operational strategy splits into two disciplines: disaster recovery, which governs the technical restoration of IT processing, and business continuity, which dictates how the organization maintains commerce while those systems are dead. Business continuity relies entirely on the integrity of physical backups. These drives must be stored in climate-controlled facilities that are geographically distant from the primary site to avoid falling victim to the same localized disaster. The standard baseline is a comprehensive monthly backup, where administrators copy the entirety of the organization's data files and application programs. Between those full monthly copies, organizations run weekly incremental backups. This captures only the specific data and program changes made since the last major backup, significantly reducing storage demands. Because transporting physical drives to a remote facility every single day is cost prohibitive for most budgets, these weekly incremental backups are frequently stored on-site. This cadence mathematically guarantees that a major catastrophe will destroy up to 3 weeks of recent data. It is a severe operational loss, but a calculated financial trade-off that keeps the business from complete extinction. If the primary facility is leveled, business operations must immediately migrate to an alternate processing center managed by an outside vendor. This graph maps the decision matrix for selecting that alternate facility. It plots vendor contract cost against recovery time, illustrating that the price of infrastructure rises exponentially as downtime approaches zero. At the lowest tier is the cold site, a bare, empty facility ready for hardware installation. It requires minimal contract cost, but forces massive, prolonged downtime. Moving slightly up the curve, a warm site provides limited networking infrastructure, shortening the recovery window. Further up the curve is the hot site, a fully operational facility available for immediate use. Its premium variant, the Flying Start site, maintains continuously updated software, cutting startup time down to a matter of minutes. The absolute apex of continuity is the mirrored data center. Running in constant parallel with the primary site, it instantly absorbs the processing load upon failure, offering true zero downtime in exchange for doubling the organization's infrastructure budget. Selecting a recovery tier requires strict financial logic. Paying for a mirrored center is fiscally irresponsible for a manufacturer that can safely absorb a week of downtime. Conversely, settling for a cold site ensures bankruptcy for a bank processing live financial transactions. From deploying asymmetric cryptography to secure a single data packet, to configuring application firewalls, to negotiating real estate for a geographical hot site, defense scales with the risk. IT security and business continuity are ultimate tests of management strategy. Leadership must calculate risks with enough precision to ensure the cost of protection never eclipses the value of the business itself.